Intro hook. It was February 2nd, 2009. On the outskirts of Albuquerque, New Mexico, a woman walking her dog stumbled upon something strange, something that didn't belong in the quiet desert. At first, it looked like a bone, maybe an animal, maybe not. But when police arrived and began to dig, they unearthed something horrifying. Human remains. Then another. And another. By the time the investigation ended, the bones of 11 women and one unborn child had been found, buried across a dusty patch of land west of the city. The media called the unknown killer the West Mesa Bone Collector. No one knew who he was. No one saw him bury his victims. And to this day, more than a decade later, his identity remains one of America's darkest mysteries. The discovery, it began innocently enough, a walk in the desert. A woman named Christine Ross was out with her dog, Ruka, near the newly developed neighborhood of West Mesa. Ruka ran ahead and began playing with what looked like a large bone. Christine snapped a picture and sent it to her sister, a nurse, asking if it looked human. The answer came quickly: call the police. Now. Officers arrived thinking it might be a single burial. But as forensic teams began to dig, the desert revealed its secrets one by one. Over several weeks, 11 women's skeletons were recovered from shallow graves spanning nearly 100 acres of sandy soil. Each was carefully placed. Each had been missing for years. The excavation became one of the largest crime scenes in U.S. history. Helicopters circled overhead, journalists gathered along the edges, and families of missing women came with tears and photographs, hoping and dreading to learn the truth. The victims, all 11 victims, were women, most of them young, ranging in age from their teens to early 30s. Many had been mothers. Most had struggled with addiction or sex work, living on Albuquerque's south side, near a street known for drugs and prostitution. For years, they had disappeared one by one between 2003 and 2005, mostly unnoticed outside their own families. The identified victims were Michelle Valdez, 22, 4 months pregnant; Jamie Barilla, 15, the youngest, who disappeared with her cousin; Evelyn Salazar, 27, Jamie's cousin; Veronica Romero, 27; Victoria Chavez, 26; Virginia Cloven, 24; Julie Neto, 24; Cinnamon Elks, 32; Sylvan Hill, 15; Doreen Marquez, 27; Monica Candelaria, 22. They were all daughters, sisters, loved by someone, but to their killer, they were disposable. Investigators realized that the victims shared one terrifying pattern. They'd all vanished from the same troubled area, the East Central Avenue corridor, known locally as the War Zone. Someone had been hunting there for years. The investigation, the West Mesa discovery, sent shockwaves across New Mexico. A task force of over 40 investigators was formed, combining the FBI, local police, and forensic anthropologists. The scale of the operation was massive. Heavy machinery combed through the sand, sifting bone fragments, clothing, jewelry, and personal effects. But finding the remains was the easy part. Finding the killer was something else entirely. There were no witnesses, no security footage, and the dry desert had erased nearly all forensic evidence. Investigators mapped out each burial site, hoping the spacing or depth might reveal a pattern. The graves were arranged almost methodically, suggesting someone who knew what he was doing and who had returned to the area multiple times. The FBI profiled the killer as a local man familiar with the terrain, likely in his 30s to 50s at the time, who targeted vulnerable women and returned repeatedly to dump his victims. But the identity behind that profile remains unknown. Theories and suspects over the years, several suspects have emerged, but none proven guilty. 1. Lorenzo Montoya, perhaps the most likely. Montoya lived less than 3 miles from the burial site. He was known to solicit sex workers and had a violent record of assaulting women. In 2006, Montoya was shot and killed by the boyfriend of a woman he had strangled during a paid encounter. Police later found rope, duct tape, and a shovel in his home. The timeline fits. His death roughly coincided with the end of the disappearances. But without DNA or physical evidence linking him to the graves, the case remains circumstantial. 2. The sex trafficking connection. Another theory suggests the women were victims of a trafficking ring that spanned from Albuquerque to Juarez, Mexico. Drug dealers and pimps along Central Avenue allegedly traded women as currency or punished those who resisted. Some vanished after being seen with known gang members. Could the West Mesa site have been a dumping ground for multiple offenders, not just one killer? 3. The truck driver theory. Some investigators considered that a long-haul truck driver could be responsible, traveling between states and disposing of bodies during stops in Albuquerque's remote outskirts. 4. The unknown local. Others believe the killer was a local construction worker or land developer familiar with West Mesa's isolation before it was developed. Someone who knew exactly when to bury and when to stop. When the housing boom ended and new homes started to rise near the site, the killer likely realized his secret graveyard was about to be discovered and vanished forever. The desert itself. To understand this case, you have to picture the place. West Mesa isn't a lush landscape. It's a dry, wind-scoured desert. Cacti. Sagebrush. Silence. The kind of silence that swallows screams and preserves bones for years. Before 2009, the area was almost untouched. No homes, no lights, no reason to go there unless you had one. Satellite images later revealed disturbances in the ground at the burial site as early as 2004, freshly dug patches visible from above, unnoticed for years. That's how deliberate it was. The killer used the desert like his personal morgue. Families and the aftermath for the victims' families. Discovery brought both relief and agony. After years of not knowing, they finally had answers, but not justice. Many had faced disbelief when they reported their daughters missing. Police often dismissed them as runaways, addicts, or transient sex workers. Only after the graves were found did the city acknowledge the magnitude of the crime. The women are now collectively known as the West Mesa victims, their memory honored by vigils and murals across Albuquerque. In 2019, 10 years after the discovery, the city erected a memorial park near the site, 11 crosses in the sand, facing west toward the sunset. But for their families, closure is impossible while the killer still walks free, or lies buried in anonymity. Theories that refuse to die even now. Locals whisper new possibilities. Some say the killer might have worked in law enforcement or had inside knowledge, explaining how he evaded capture for so long. Others claim multiple killers could be involved, using the same area as a known disposal site. A few even believe the real culprit might have moved elsewhere, continuing his crimes under a different name, a different city, a different desert. Each new disappearance of a vulnerable woman in the Southwest sparks a haunting question. Is the bone collector back? Why he stopped. One of the most chilling details is when the killing stopped. The last known victim vanished in 2005, around the same time urban development began near the burial site. Heavy machinery, surveyors, and construction crews soon filled the area. It's as if the killer saw civilization closing in and walked away. He didn't get caught. He just stopped. That eerie silence since 2005 raises two possibilities. He's either dead, or he's still out there, watching, satisfied that his work remains undiscovered for years. Reflection. A closing. The West Mesa Bone Collector case stands as one of America's most haunting modern mysteries. 11 women. 1 unborn child. No fingerprints. No DNA. No confession. Only the desert knows the truth. The West Mesa site has since been developed. Rows of houses and playgrounds now stand where shallow graves once rested. Families live there, unaware of the darkness beneath their feet. And yet, every time the desert wind blows across Albuquerque, it seems to whisper their names, the women forgotten by society but claimed by the sand. They were mothers, daughters, friends. They were not perfect, but they were human. And someone decided they were disposable. That's the real horror of the Bone Collector, not just the killings, but the silence that followed. The desert may keep its secrets, but we will not. This is Silent Shrouds, where the forgotten are remembered, and the shadows tell the truth.